Winchester are building new houses as part of a new town proposal. Small businesses are dealing with the impact of the end of the second lockdown. And student nursing placements are facing the struggle of COVID-19. Good afternoon and welcome to Winchester News Online. I'm Lexi Dutton. Tensions rise as proposals for the biggest planning application in Winchester history are released to the public. The plans include building 5,000 new houses on Hampshire's countryside. Olivia Fraser reports.
Proposals to build a new town between Winchester and Hursley have been revealed. The plans for Royal Down include the construction of 5,000 new homes, 2 primary schools, 1 secondary school and a healthcare centre, all of which will be built on Hampshire's countryside. A strong opposition is rising against the proposals.
My initial reaction was great surprise and shock at the sheer scale of this urbanisation of the South Winchester countryside, and judging by the response I've had from constituents, they share that view.
The plans could lead to problems including increased traffic.
You put that number of homes, so more than 5,000 homes would generate 16,000 traffic movements per day to and from that settlement. So either that's going to impact on Hursley, Chandler's Ford, Ladwell and Otterbourne, or it'll impact at the other end Compton, Shawford, Badger Farm, Oliver's Battery, up towards the sort of M3 end. So there's a traffic issue is a major problem as well.
However, plans are only in a register of sites that developers wish to build, and this does not guarantee permission.
At the moment, this is a glossy brochure, but giving everyone around a very clear idea now of what the landowner is looking for. Doesn't mean that it's valid, doesn't mean that it will go ahead. It's possible that in the local plan process, the Winchester City Council would come back and say, no, this isn't a suitable use for this land at all.
So it seems this could be an ongoing battle to preserve Hampshire's countryside. Olivia Fraser, Winchester News Online.
With the second national lockdown coming to an end and a new tier system in place, our reporter Alice Howell has spoken to small business owners about how their experience of both lockdowns and what they did to keep their businesses afloat.
2020 has been a long and arduous year for many. The devastating effects of the pandemic have been felt throughout the nation and the rest of the world. When the lockdown is lifted on the 2nd of December, England will be following a 3-tiered system.
Go back instead to a regional tiered approach, applying the toughest measures where COVID is most prevalent. And while the previous local tiers did cut the number and cut the R number, they were not quite enough to reduce it below 1. So the scientific advice, I'm afraid, is that as we come out, our tiers need to be made tougher.
While schools and other educational facilities have been allowed to remain open, small businesses such as non-essential shops, tattoo parlours and hairdressers have been forced to close their doors once again.
I've got a good clientele. I'm really lucky. I've had my business for 13 years. So I feel like I would recover, you know, because obviously my clients want their hair done. It's a good industry to be in, really, because people always want to look good, especially after a long time of not having a hairdo. So I feel like my business will recover, but it's still very worrying. Whilst we were in lockdown, I had to source PPE, so I had to get visors, masks, gloves, screens, cleaning stuff. I ended up getting quite a bit.
I've been tattooing for 16 years now, and I've never been forced to not work for longer than 2 weeks. The first lockdown, which forced me to shut my studio from the 23rd of March to the 23rd of July, brought anxiety, stress and the chaos to my life. Not knowing what was around the corner was one of the hardest things to deal with. Though the government rolled out incredible grant schemes and the lockdown loans as well, that was very, very helpful. It was the vague uncertainty and lack of guidelines for my industry in particular that I found myself having to battling my own way through. It took me a full 2 weeks to reschedule all of my clients. I have a 6-month waiting list, and it took me 2 weeks to rebook those all by 4 months, which took my bookings into mid next year to late next year.
A second lockdown has been hard for many, but even harder on our local businesses working hard to stay afloat. When the lockdown is lifted, the encouragement is to stay safe but shop local. That's the latest. I'm Alice Howe.
While everyone knows the high street is suffering due to COVID-19, there are other businesses which are also being badly affected. The wedding industry, which is usually worth almost £15 billion, has now virtually stopped. I went to find out how Winchester bridal businesses are dealing with the pandemic. A wedding is seen as the most joyous time of a woman's life. The gorgeous dress, the exchanging of rings, and the big celebration afterward. But ever since COVID-19, the dreams of a perfect wedding are going down the drain.
By the time we got to this point where we had to just cancel it, I was angry and almost like gave up on the whole idea of getting married. It's just all this effort, you put a lot of effort in and it got taken away from us. And I was angry, my partner, he was up, we were upset, we were angry, and it did kind of cause a couple of weeks where we were very out of sync with each other.
It's not just the brides themselves that are being put down by the virus. The whole industry is going through a very difficult time and struggling to keep everything intact.
The wedding photography business was kind of hit the worst. I mean, everything, obviously, in that first 4 months, everything was a wasteland. And I think it was a real shock because you went from literally a couple of weeks before wedding season started and building yourself up to having no weekends and being flat out for 6 months. Suddenly it was gone, along with, I think, in the first month, about £20,000 of work basically disappeared down the drain. Shoots cancelled, weddings moved, all that kind of thing. My couples were, bless their hearts, absolutely freaking out.
One of the biggest aspects of a wedding is the dress. So the bridal stores selling these are a big part in helping the brides throughout these times.
The ones that were already customers whose dresses have been coming in, we've been offering them free storage for their dress, because a lot of people, I mean, I'm included, I wouldn't have anywhere to store a wedding dress. So for a lot of my existing brides, I've been able to offer storage for them. Although we are getting a little full now, so I'm asking some people to take them home. But, those sorts of things. It's difficult to know what else you can do.
So although many brides are getting very anxious about upcoming weddings during COVID-19, the businesses within the industry are doing all they can to keep the weddings perfect. During lockdown, the focus of the pandemic turned towards hospitals, where nurses became the heroes of the nation. But now the next generation of nurses are facing delays and changes to their training.
The COVID-19 pandemic has had a huge impact on how many courses at universities run. However, I wanted to see how those courses that require time in the hospital have had to adapt. I spoke to the University of Winchester's second-year nursing student Bethany Overton on how her work placements changed.
The way that we had to dress, we had to use a lot of PPE, which was visors or goggles, masks, aprons and gloves. Anytime you went to see a patient, you had to wear aprons and gloves, and obviously your mask throughout the entire shift. Second-year students are most likely going to be able to help out. First-year students are most likely probably not. If it goes worse again, they'll probably be taken out like we were for our second placement, because it was up in the unknown regions, So I don't really know what's going to happen for the first-year students now.
Since the first adult nursing cohort began at the University of Winchester in 2019, the university kept their students in their placement practice for as long as possible before having to use learning in a classroom or online to make up the hours lost on placement.
I suppose my concern moving forwards with it is the fact that we are now living with COVID, and I think we have to. We can't use it as an excuse anymore. There can't be any of those knee-jerk responses. We need to now have a strategy in place that this is what we've got, this is what we're living with, this is how we manage it. We can't just shut down every single time the numbers go up or something happens. And that's where we're working really closely with our practice partners at the moment to ensure that doesn't happen.
With the UK being about 40,000 nurses down, it is important to get nursing students qualifying at the right time. Kira Donachie, Winchester News Online.
The University of Winchester Hub has made it possible for students to volunteer throughout the pandemic. Ania Lavella reports.
Winchester Hub volunteering is helping students to make most during their time at university.
making sure in the pandemic it is done safely by introducing remote and online volunteering, as well as virtual events. They are trying to tackle elderly isolation, and this holiday season they have created a mailbox to send Christmas cards to Brandon Care Home. They have also encouraged volunteers to send their musical performances as part of the project to make holiday a bit more merry.
Winchester Hub is a student-led charity that focuses on social innovation and helping the wider community. We provide multiple volunteering opportunities for students to get involved and help their community, from working with children to knitting and crochet.
For 6 years, volunteers from Winchester Hub has been making a change around the community with the aim to support new generation to make positive change for now and in the future. This is Annie Elelema, Winchester News Online.
High street stores have increasingly been put under pressure due to online shopping becoming the most popular way to buy goods. With the pandemic devastating high street stores even more, a new government scheme has been unveiled to put money into our high streets. With plans underway, we sent reporter Alice Howe down to Gosport High Street to find out more.
Amid the pandemic, online shopping became the only way for us to have our fill of retail therapy. However, feeling the strain more than ever before are our high street stores, with high streets becoming more and more barren. In a bid to save local high streets, 69 towns in England have secured funding from the historic England High Streets Heritage Scheme. The 4-year development will bring vacant shops back into use, and it will also set up office spaces and creative spaces. This will create more jobs for the ever-increasing number of unemployment at the moment due to the coronavirus pandemic. Andrew Sugden, the director, has spoken to me about his plans with one of the high streets, Gosport High Street, that has received £1.78 million of government funding. As part of my wider responsibilities, I am project directing the Gosport High Street Heritage Action Zone. This location has secured £1.78 million of government funding as part of a wider £3.2 million regeneration programme, designed to revitalise and animate the twin conservation areas of Gosport High Street. I have spoken to some Gosport locals about their thoughts and feelings on the regeneration of Gosport High Street and what they feel this money will bring to the town.
It's changed, and it's changed for the worst. We used to have a thriving market every Saturday, every Tuesday. The high street was full of people. The high street was full of market traders. So it's not changed for the better. We spent hundreds of thousands of pounds on discussions and fees. Rise of the internet, that didn't help.
We've got a fantastic history alongside Portsmouth Harbour there. Between the Submarine Museum and the Explosion Museum could be completely renovated with Endeavour Quay being set up on the old campus site, old pubs, and various businesses right along the harbour side. To redevelop that whole area would be playing to Gosport's strengths along the waterfront, as well as generating incredible revenue for bars and restaurants all along that waterfront.
With the funding soon to be secured and plans in place, the future is looking bright for our high streets. Alice Howell, Winol News.
As the UK is released from lockdown tomorrow, the country will go back to a 3-tier system. Before the second lockdown was introduced, 42% of the population was in Tier 1, but now 99% of the UK has been placed in Tier 2 and 3. Our reporter Olivia has been following this story. So Olivia, with tensions rising, what's happening today?
Well, today the MPs are voting on the new tier system in the House of Commons. However, Boris Johnson's facing backlash from some of the Conservative MPs who are unhappy that the rules are stricter than they were before lockdown. I spoke to Winchester's MP Steve Bryan, who's against the tougher tiers.
I wasn't a fan of the second national lockdown. I thought we should have given the tiered system a chance to work, so I'm pleased that we're moving back at least to the tiered system. But after a month of so-called national lockdown, Winchester entered in Tier 1, it's coming out in Tier 2. So I would be, I think, entitled to ask, what exactly has this lockdown achieved, other than closing plenty of non-essential businesses, costing people their livelihoods and many people their jobs? And I'm going to need a lot of convincing that these proposals will save more lives than they will cost before I support them in the House of Commons.
So when will we find out the outcome?
Well, the debate's currently still taking place, however we can find out after the vote at 7 p.m.
Thanks, Olivia. That's all for this week. Thanks for watching.